Hello everyone, my name is Jesse from Core Concept and welcome back to the Rollout DevTools tutorial series. In today's video we're going to be looking at the database fields within the DevTools, particularly audio, sprites, and names. This is going to be a relatively quick video, but it's going to be something that a lot of the other tutorial videos build on, so it is very important all the same. We're going to dive right in and start looking at audio. This is basically just a way to register audio files into the DevTools to be referenced in other places. So for example, you can add a single file, and we're going to add electricity loop, and then we're going to add another one, electricity loop 2. Add multiple is just going to let you pick multiple files, and it will add them all. You can see we have them registered there. Names, I'm skipping sprites on purpose right now, is just a list of first names and last names. If you want to have your first and last name in the game, you can do it using this database, or if there are some names that you feel like should be in there or that you would find cool or funny or whatever, you can certainly add them in here. And last but not least, we have the sprites database, and this is where you can add your sprite data. Basically, you just need to give it an identifier. So we'll just call it temp sprite or whatever. It doesn't particularly matter because we're not actually going to be using this in the end. We'll add a metal river. Actually, no. Let's do this for. Let's call it metal river. We'll set up the same properties as in our tileset video, and so we'll say 50 milliseconds. 4 and 4, and again, just to kind of go over the animated sprite properties one more time, pixels per unit should be what one frame is in size. For a terrain sprite, the pivot point should always be 0, 0. You want animated checked if it is in fact animated, and you specify how many rows and how many columns. So this is 4 by 4, which means it has 16 frames, and we're going to put 50 milliseconds between each frame when we're animating it. Now, where you might use something like this, in the previous video where we were looking at events, you might have an event where all of the water on the map is replaced with molten metal, and that may cause your resource generation to generate liquid metal instead of water. You could actually use this identifier to replace the base tiles in the map. Now, why don't we do a quick example of that? So I'm going to go back to our Calamity Lua, and I'm going to say we're going to go into map pregen, which is where you're going to do this kind of thing, and we're going to go back to our sprites just so we've got our identifier here, and we're going to check for game.mod var exists, and we'll call it AI metal rivers. And what we'll do is we will we'll loop through each tile on the map. So we'll say map.get width, and we'll say map.set underlay tile ij metal river. And so and then what we'll do is, if you use a modvar like this to change the map generation, you always want to make sure that you clear the modvar afterwards. So if our mod variable of metal rivers exists and it's set to 1, then we replace it all with metal river. And finally, we're going to set it to 0 so that this won't happen on the next stop unless the event happens again. Now this is as far as I'm going to go into this Lua in this tutorial, but if there's interest in showing how to actually modify some of the resource generation so that metal, liquid metal, for example, would be generated instead of water, I will create a specific tutorial for that because that is actually a relatively involved process. But this is how you would change the underlay tile so that all the rivers are replaced with water. The other thing you might want to do with this same condition, now these functions will be called in order, so you'll get preload, pregen, postload. So obviously if you have postload checking for this mod var, you're not going to want to set this to 0 until the final function that needs it is called. So actually I did this backwards. So this is what we want. So post load, this is where we're going to set our underlay tiles. This is where we're going to do all of our metal rivers and everything like that. In pregen, if that value is set, we're going to add 2 additional rivers to the map so that there's lots and lots of metal flowing through, and the player will really be able to see it. So that's an example of what you might use this identifier for and why you may want to register these sprites into the game. So that's going to wrap up our tutorial on the database, audio sprites, and names. There may be additional resource databases added later, and if that's the case, I will do updated tutorials for them then. But thank you for watching this tutorial. Up next, we have buildings and subsprites. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next tutorial.